Welcome back to episode number 4 of Becoming an Amateur Racing Driver. Now, today's video was originally going to be completing your art test, but then I thought of a video I had for later on in this series that I could bring forward and actually might be a bit more relevant. So that's going to be getting out on track, doing some track days, and possibly some tutoring. How important is this before your art test or even afterwards when you're trying to become a racing driver, even on an amateur level? I think track days and getting some tutoring is something very valuable that a lot of people don't do before they do their art test, myself included. As I said already, I'd never driven on a track before I did my art test, and I think this video could be a little bit more relevant being earlier on in this series. So the next episode, number 5, will be definitely about completing your art test. I'll be honest, I don't think track days are 100% essential before you do your art test. As I said, I didn't do one and I managed to pass first time, which is obviously good. But for some people that have had no experience in go-karting or anything and are trying to take their art license for the first time, possibly doing a track day would be important, because as I said, I've done a lot of karting, only rental karting, nothing serious, for a number of years, sort of 11, 12 years, long time. Never achieved anything, but nonetheless, I think that if you've done that, it gives you a bit more of a platform to know about racing lines, braking points. Even on a kart track, you can sort of, within a few days, you can pretty easily sort of start to understand what it's like on a racetrack. It's not as simple as copy and paste. There are differences, but you know, I'm still not at the level where I'm still understanding the definite braking point for certain corners. But karting definitely helped, as did simulators, which we might speak about in a later part of this journey. There are many ways to get out on track in the United Kingdom. The cheapest way, of course, would be taking your own car out on track. But of course, for a lot of people there, road cars aren't really race cars. I mean, some people do like to modify their road cars and make them more track focused. But for a lot of people, maybe the best way about going about this is renting a race car or a track specific car for half a day or a day just before their art test, to get a bit more knowledge of the car, the track, and the sort of speed you might be going at. So in my opinion, it's probably best to get the experience in a car that's relatively similarly powered to the car you're going to be doing your art test in, especially if you've had no experience on the track whatsoever. So the experiences I had were all in pretty similarly powered cars. Of course, my art test was in a Peugeot 208. I drove a Mazda MX-5 on the track. I drove a Ford Puma on the track. I drove later on a Citroen Saxo on the track. I guess the most powerful car I drove was probably the BMW 3 Series. Now, of course, taking your own car to the track is cheaper, but maybe you won't be getting as much valuable knowledge if you're taking that over possibly a car that's a little bit more track focused. So you can go on track in your own car for about £200, so still quite expensive, especially even if you're just doing it for fun. It's still quite an expensive day out, £200 around a racetrack. But of course, it does give you a lot of time in the car. Whereas if you rent a car, they might put restrictions on the amount of laps you're doing, the amount of time you're out on track, or something like that. They might restrict you in some way, which obviously doesn't give you as good value for money. But in terms of the knowledge you get from those minutes out on track, it might be a little bit better, as it gives you a little bit more of an idea about the certain braking points in a car that will be very similar to the car you're doing your art test in. There are a few other ways to do it as well. I mean, I think a prominent way a lot of people get their first action out on track is by doing a sort of gift experience thing. So it's not the cheapest in the world, but motorsport was all quite expensive, so it's all on a pretty similar level. So you can do, I think, 15 minutes at Brands Hatch in a BMW 5 Series for about £100, but that's about 15 minutes out on track for £100. So that is obviously quite a big amount of money. But then if we look back to how much I was paying for my sort of half day in the Ford Puma, I think that cost about £250, and I got probably maybe 45 minutes out on track. So it's not that much more expensive to do the BMW thing, but it's probably a little bit more relevant to be doing it in something like a Ford Puma, which is much more similar to the art test car, which of course the Peugeot 208. So we've kind of hinted on this already in this series, but track days do cost different amounts. It's not just all the same rate. So you can do half a day, to be fair, at a track for normally about £120. For a lot of people, that might be enough experience. You know, you've got probably around Brands Hatch, maybe 50, 60 laps under your belt through half a day. Good stuff. You know, that's a lot of knowledge there. You can go and take your art test, hopefully with no problem. But if you want to get even more experience out on track, of course, you're spending a day out on track. That costs you about £200. Then if you're renting a car, as we've said already, for half a day, the Ford Puma was £250. I did a whole day in the BMW at Donington Park for about 400, so that was probably about 200, 220 for the actual track day, and then obviously the expenses I was paying to Sam after that. So these track day sessions and learning experiences after my ARS test were so important before I stepped into a race car for the first time and tried to take part in my first motor race. But I'll be honest, I would have liked to have had a couple of these experiences, or at least one of them, before my ARS test. Now, the reason it didn't happen was a little bit of oversight on my thought, but more down to budget, because motorsport is expensive, and that's the reason why a lot of things don't happen in motorsport. It's because of the cost. So you can understand, you know, it'll all rack up. I mean, we've already spoken about how much it could cost for a whole season of motorsport. And, you know, the more testing you add, the more money it all starts drying your bank account pretty quickly. So that's the reason why I didn't have this experience before my ART test. But we got a bit more funding after my ART test for the university documentary. A few more sponsors pulled through, which meant that I could do a bit more testing than I thought I was going to be able to. But, you know, I would have liked my ART test to have been not the first time I drove out the pit lane, is what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way. I'd have liked to have driven on the track before my ART test. So my next bit of advice, or next idea I'm going to be speaking about here, is getting a tutor. Do you need to? I mean, it's probably more relevant to people that are going to try and make a career in motorsport, because let's be honest, a lot of amateur racing drivers will just go out there for a bit of fun and just basically hoon it around the track for 20 minutes every other Sunday and just have a bit of fun that way. But for maybe the slightly more professional people, they want to get tutors that are with them every single race meeting, trying to get every little moment right in their motorsport career. But me personally, I just got in contact with someone that I've sort of known about in club motorsport for many years. His name was Rod Burley. He's won, I think it's 1,000. It's a huge amount of races. It's an insane amount of races. He's got the most amount of race victories in the United Kingdom. He's an incredibly talented racing driver, especially at Brands Hatch. And I got him to, well, I paid him to help me out for half a day at Brands Hatch when I tested out the Ford Puma. So that was a really, really valuable day for me. And I said the BMW was a good day as well. The two best days were that, the BMW test, and also the Ford Puma day, in my opinion, because the Ford Puma day just gave me so much experience. That was my first time out on track after passing my ART, and with Rod Burley alongside me for a couple of laps, he really sort of started to give me confidence, started to allow me to learn naturally, and gave me some really good idea about braking points, turning points and stuff like that. And if you can afford to get a tutor before your ART test or even after your ART test, it'll be so valuable. Even if it's just one session ever. I think that getting a bit of feedback from someone that's had an idea in this motorsport world, especially on an amateur level, early on is very, very decisive about where you're going to go with your sort of motorsport journey. As I said, I've only done one race, and I know that I definitely wasn't the quickest, but maybe if Rob Burley was a bit more, you know, critical of me and kept saying this is bad, this is bad, this is bad, instead of sort of pointing out where I can improve and sort of going about it in a better way, maybe I would have had less motivation going to my first motor race. But getting a good mentor definitely helped me out early on in my journey. So I've mentioned Rod, but also someone that really helped me out on this journey was Sam. So I mentioned him already in this series multiple times, but Sam, the owner of the BMW that was supposed to do my first ever motor racing, was so helpful throughout my journey. As I said, I only had sort of 20-30 minutes with Rob Burley to allow him to help me improve, but he did help me improve quite quickly in a number of ways in the first sort of half an hour of driving with him, so that was really, really good. But Sam helped me in a lot of ways through a longer duration of time, because I did multiple test sessions with him. I also did the qualifying and nearly did the race with him in April. So I spent a lot more time with Sam working with the BMW, and as he had such a good, I guess, relationship with the car, he knew exactly the best way to drive that car, whereas Rod Burley hadn't really driven the car I was driving with him as much, because he's used to a lot more power than the Ford Puma that I was driving. But nonetheless, Sam really was a great mentor in a lot of ways, because he just gave me so much just great feedback, and especially that sort of test session we had at Donington. I'm going to keep harping on about this because it was really, really useful, but it was really, really good because he would sit alongside me for 15 minutes, would come in, I'll do some laps by myself, and then he would get back in once again, and then instantly I've gained like 2 seconds on one lap, so over a lap I should say. So I guess that tutoring, just little bits of information, those nuggets of information here or there, just really greatly improve your, I guess, understanding of the cars, and also just you know, ability to know how far you can push it, because it's worrying, especially when you're driving someone else's car. You definitely don't want to go over the limit. So maybe working with someone like that, especially if you're going to be the co-driver of someone in an endurance team, especially on a club level, you know, getting out on track with them as much as possible and learning the sort of the little the bad and good points about their car is going to be so important about, you know, making that sort of journey and that little story between yourself, them and the car a successful one. And Sam sort of gave me all this information for free, basically. I mean, I know I was paying him for his time using his car and the track day, for example, but he was really helpful, considering I wasn't really paying him anything. I wasn't paying him to be a tutor. I was paying basically for the car and his time, as I said. I think I've come across so many great people that just are actively trying to help you. So if you're trying to go ahead and do some racing in 2020, why can't I say it right? If you're trying to do some racing, try and find some people to speak to, you know, do some track days with them, sort of get an understanding of how you can improve. If they've got experience of 5 years in racing, get them alongside you, get them to give you some tips, let them out in your car to sort of show you where you can be quicker. All that sort of stuff is so invaluable, really. It's so important that you get out there and do that, because I think at the end of the day it will make you better when trying to go for your ARDS test, or when you're trying to go for your first race or race win. If you can't afford to go out there and get a mentor for your early part of your racing career, then something else you could go out to do to sort of understand your driving and where you can improve, well, there's a couple of ways actually, to be fair. There's obviously the simulator route. Lots of people, especially the younger generation, get out there, go on racing games, Forza, Gran Turismo. Then on a bit more of a professional level, you've got stuff like iRacing, R-Factor, Assetto Corsa. All that sort of stuff allows you to get an understanding of the car, the track, braking zones, steering zones, all that sort of stuff. Also, a way that you can start to learn about your car and your characteristics behind the wheel is getting an action camera. Now, I'm not really sponsored by any action camera companies, but it is so important. Get one of these things. I mean, they obviously vary in cost. You can spend as little as £30–40 on one. You can spend up to £300–400 on one. But if you're simply trying to monitor your driving style and understand what you're doing wrong and what you're doing right, something like that is so important, because it allows you to understand what makes you quick throughout a corner, what makes you slow throughout a corner, and especially if you have the ability to get a better driver in terms of experience alongside you to do a few laps, you can put your lap and their lap side by side and see where you're losing time to them or gaining time to them. It's a weird thing. That doesn't seem like a great tool in a lot of people's mind, but for me, looking back on the sort of, you know, the racing and the stuff I've done, I think that is so important. Now, weirdly enough, I haven't actually looked back at the race I did in the Citroen Saxo since I did that race. Now, I'm going to be sort of diving into that later on in this series and actually watching it properly for the first time, which I'm slightly worried about, because I know I made a couple of little mistakes, nothing terrible, but I made a couple of little mistakes along the way, which I'm still annoyed about myself. But I don't kind of want to watch it back in a lot of ways. But a lot of the test session stuff I did, I went home, got it loaded up on the computer straight away and started to look at it and started to see where I was quick and where I was slow, and it allowed me to gain a bit of knowledge that way. So if you have the means to do so, in your road car, or even if the track day you're hiring, a track car you're hiring, get one of these out and film it. It's such a nice little tool that you can do in this generation, because maybe 10, maybe even 7–8 years ago, it wasn't really something that was the norm. Of course, getting out on track is always a very exciting experience, and for me, I've always grasp that opportunity, because I always worry about things before they happen. So even when I'm sort of living out this dream I've had for the whole time, I mean, I know it's only on an amateur level, but it was always a dream for me to get out there and take part in a motor race. So I was trying to relish every single opportunity that was sort of put in front of me, and I'm very thankful that it all sort of worked like it did. But I think the most important thing is, even if you are nervous, it's a bit cliche, but have fun, because let's be honest, we you know, live for these sorts of moments, and if you're constantly worrying about it, it's not going to be something that you cherish if you're worrying about it the whole day. If you try and live in the moment and enjoy it, that's very valuable. And I think I learned that, because in my ARDS test I was worrying so much, and even though I passed and there was no issues with my ARDS test, I don't look back on that day as good as maybe I could have done if I was just enjoying it a bit more. Then once I got in the Puma, that's when I started to be like, I'm here to enjoy this and have fun. So that's when my mentality changed a little bit, and I think the whole project improved because of it. I think it's very easy to get lost in it all sometimes, and sometimes you don't end up enjoying it. So have fun. So the next episode is the important one, the one I was supposed to go up today, but I think I should have brought this one forward, and I think rightly so. So on Monday you're going to be seeing the art test video. So I'm really excited to share this with you. Some really good footage we got from this day, and you can probably see by my grin, I'm excited to share with you these moments and some stuff that hasn't been shown already. So yeah, I'm looking forward to sort of sharing that one with you in a couple of days' time. Thank you so much for the support on this series already. It's much appreciated. I know it's a brand new genre really for this channel. I mean, I know the documentary was kind of along this sort of style, but very much a different approach to video making than I was doing just a month or two ago. So I'm very, very thankful that at least a couple of people are sticking with me on this little journey, and hopefully it will grow into something great in 2020. So once again, we'll be recording this documentary every single week. Once I buy the car, that's when that journey will start. Until that point, this journey in terms of this little video series will continue on until that point, and then every single week a little documentary will be produced. So I'm excited for that. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Please remember to like the video and subscribe if you are new. That'd be much appreciated. And yeah, stick around, and I'll see you soon for another video. The art test is among us. I messed that up. Why? Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you soon. Goodbye.